Hi, I'm Jen Barnes, and you're about to experience how to ditch the old ways of doing things, embrace your neurodivergence, learn tips and tricks to function optimally, and love yourself, neurodivergence and all. Welcome to the Self Loved Woman podcast. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. I want to talk about what's going on. I want to talk about what's going on in the world and how to not let the chaos of it, the pain of it, wreck your business. And before we get into it, I want to say, I'm in no way saying that we can't have compassion and be involved in some of the things happening in the world. But I also want to say that I'm noticing some ways doing that too much is actually getting in the way of people doing what they need to do for their business and their life. And so we're going to talk about that today and what to do about it. So I've been noticing, whether it's coaching clients or therapy clients, people coming in who are really struggling with the events of the world. And of course, there's so much war going on. There's the threat of World War III, which who knows, by the time this drops, maybe that won't be a thing. Maybe it will be a thing. And by the way, that's nervous laughter. And the stuff going on with the Palestinians and in Israel and Ukraine and all of the hurricanes in the United States, right? I don't want to stress you out listening to this, not to mention all the chaos of the presidential election in the state and all of the other things going on in the world. I know there was a militant group in Pakistan that was creating some challenges. And I'm sure there's other things I'm just not aware of. And so there's a lot going on right now. There's so much going on right now. And as ADHDers, we tend to be very compassionate people. Well, I shouldn't say very compassionate, but at least highly sensitive. You might be compassionate, but I don't know that's only or necessarily an ADHD trait. But what is common is to be more sensitive for things to stick in your brain more like that especially if you're seeing images or videos. And so the problem with that is then if that's sticking with you, it's going to make it harder for you to do the things you need to do for your business. And I get it. Listen, what's going on is hard. And a lot of the people, if you're listening to this, chances are you're one of my people and you have a big heart and you want to help the world. That's why you're going into business or why you're in business is to help people. And so when you see the suffering of the world right now, it feels like you want to help. And I get that. I want to help too. And I've noticed my own self doing ineffective things that are not actually going to help, right? Me binging NPR or YouTube videos about different things related to these events. Or even, I know some are on TikTok. I hear from my clients. I had to get off TikTok. It was too dramatic for me, too intense. But anyway, it's all over. It's everywhere we go. And it I get the desire to be informed. And I get that sometimes it feels like if you're not informed, then you don't care or you don't have compassion. And so it gets tricky because we want people to know that we care. We want the people of the world who are struggling to know they're in our hearts. And at the same time, just watching stuff without anyone really knowing about it, except the people around you as they watch you shut down farther and farther, uh, isn't actually doing anything to help the problem, right? And so, at least that's what I noticed for myself, right? We're going to talk about how we can help later, but just to sit with the challenge here, it's so hard. I noticed my own self though. When I sat with it, I'm like, what am I seeking? Because I was obsessively reading NPR for several nights and not getting to bed till late. And I could sense some panic, like there were parts of me panicking. And when I asked inside, what is it that you're looking for? I got this sense that I was looking for certainty and good news. And that's a problem because unless you're looking at Fix the News, which used to be Future Crunch, that reports on all the amazing positive things happening in the world, chances are you're not coming across good news. Chances are there's not certainty. And so watching all of the trauma of the world right now is dysregulating our nervous systems. It's and I'm not trying to be a jerk and be like, don't care about other people. You need to stay regulated. It's just that there has to be a balance there if your intention is to grow a business. Because if you've been listening for a while, I know that a dysregulated nervous system makes it really hard in business. And there's two reasons on my mind about it right now. One is it makes it very hard for the ADHD brain to focus. So if you are dysregulating your nervous system, if you're in your fight or flight response or shutdown response, and we'll talk about how you know, right? But if that's what's going on, that is making it even harder for your ADHD brain to focus and not get distracted, to sit down and do the things you need to do. It's making it way harder. And the other thing is when you own a business, your energy is what is behind the business. And that comes out in everything we do. That comes out in our podcasts. It comes out in our social media. It comes out in how we talk to our teams and our clients. And so getting dysregulated and riled up about world events, not that the emotions aren't valid, not that we want to avoid the feelings, but watching it so much that we are overwhelmed by it is really harmful for business because of the energy it puts off. And then it makes it so much harder for you to focus on, prioritize, and do the things you need to do. And I speak from experience here. I noticed I was having a hard time getting out of bed and I was numbing out. This might be you. Maybe you're numbing out at night, binging Netflix or doom scrolling, or maybe you're obsessively reading some kind of news station, whatever works for you in terms of news, right? And it's not effective for what we need if we're exposing ourselves to what's going on in the world. And I'm not judging anyone who's like, no, Jen, I can't look at the news at all. Like, I get it. I go on, I can't think of the word I want. I stopped watching the news for a while. There's a word I want, but in pop culture, but I can't remember what it is. But anyway, I take a break from all of that for a while so that I can be present with my clients who I can help. Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably similar to me in that you are serving people. But if you are dysregulated, if you are unable to do the things you need to do to build and grow your business, then there's a good chance you're not serving your people as much as you could or would if you had the energy and inner resources. So, some of how we know when we're getting too much news is some of this stuff, right? Like when you start to struggle in your business, when you start to struggle with focus and getting stuff done. And don't get me wrong, it's not lost on me that those things are already hard with ADHD. But if it's feeling harder, that might be why. And like I said, it might be harder to get out of bed, or you might be numbing out at night after work or in the morning, whenever, instead of doing the things that would actually rejuvenate you and refuel you. And so that is an indicator that, like, ooh, this is impacting you. And again, it's so tricky. This is so tricky because on the one hand, we have that compassion and empathy for the people who are suffering, and we want them to feel supported and that people care because we would want that too. And so we don't want to just turn a blind eye to it and be like, I don't care, because that's not true. We do care. It's just that we want to do the caring in an effective way. Watching a bunch of TikToks on what's going on in Gaza is not going to help anyone in Gaza. But maybe there are ways to help them. I know a community I'm a part of has found that because the aid is struggling to get there, there's other things that they're doing to raise awareness, right? Or if you're very, very concerned about the upcoming presidential election in the United States, how can you get involved? I wrote postcards to encourage people to vote. Or if you have a certain candidate that you want to get behind, because those postcards tend to be nonpartisan. But if you want to get behind a certain candidate, you can join a phone bank for them to help get the vote out, right? Whatever it is you're concerned about, there's likely an effective way to help that doesn't involve you constantly dysregulating yourself so that you're not able to do what you need to do for your business and your life. Because no one anywhere is going the people in the hurricanes in the United States, like us just worrying about it and obsessing over it and thoughts and prayers alone is not going to help. But if we can actually do something. But here's the thing, there are so many not great things happening right now. And I want to say, if you read Fix the News, oh my gosh, if you don't get a hold of that newsletter, it comes into your inbox in your email. But if you read Fix the News, there are good things going on. But right now, there are several very awful things going on. And so it feels like a scary time, and maybe you don't feel that, and that's great if you're not like, "Ooh," but most people I know, and I feel this myself, it feels almost like a scary time. So it's like, just watching that though, watching all the scariness is not helping anyone. Freaking out about it is not helping anyone. So one of the things you can do is pick a cause, and that's the one where you maybe put most of your focus so that you're doing something productive, so that you actually are being effective with the way you're interacting with the content about all the hard things going on in the world right now. And that doesn't mean you have to pick only one cause. It's just a lot of times with ADHD, we can be pulled in so many different directions. And then when we're pulled in so many different directions, that's dysregulating our nervous system because it's big, not great stuff, then that doesn't leave much room for you to do the work in your business that you need to do. And so, what gets important then is also whatever it is you decide to do, whether you decide to stop watching the news for a while or whether you volunteer somewhere or whatever, however you choose to do this, it's also important to get grounded. And that when you do get off kilter, that you then notice that and you come back and get grounded. And we're going to talk about like ways to do that, right? One of the ways is to read Fix the News. I didn't plan on talking about that, but that's actually a nice newsletter because it's like, okay, not everything is horrible. There are some very horrible things going on, but not everything is falling apart. There are some really amazing things happening with climate change, people addressing it. There are some really amazing things happening for violence going down in the United States, believe it or not. Homicides went down, I think, in 2023, and then it's looking like it will have gone down in 2024. So there are things that are going on that are good, that if we're not exposed to them, we just sit in the heavy, and that's not helping anyone. It's certainly not helping you, but just sitting in the heavy to the point where you are paralyzed is not helping anyone else either. So if your intention by staying informed is to actually help, then you're not able to meet that intention. So we want to focus on how to be effective, like I said before. We already talked about some of those ways. Another piece, like I said, is getting grounded or regrounding after you've picked up something about what is going on. And yes, we can talk about nervous system regulation. You hear me talk about that topic a lot. It's important, especially with ADHD, for us to regulate our nervous system. And that's because it's already hard enough for us to focus, to attend to things, and to feel motivated. And so, if we are in our fight or flight response or our shutdown response or vacillating between the two, it's going to be very, very hard to feel motivated and have an ability to focus on what needs to get done for our business. Because in those protective states, the fight or flight and shutdown states, the only priority for your body is survival. So when you're getting thrown into those states by being exposed to the chaos of the world right now, your own body is then focused on survival. So it's going to be really hard to write that blog or do the podcast or make an offer or shine in your webinar or whatever it is that you're doing. And Of course it is, right? You're not a bad person for that. That's just how we're wired. So then the important thing is to know how to get regulated again. And that's something we talk a lot about in my programs, both Ignite, which is a low tier offer, and Ascend, my higher tier offer. Um, but for now, it's like, how do you get grounded? And one piece of this is making sure that you are taking care of your own physical, emotional, and mental wellness. And what does that mean? Sleep. Get plenty of sleep. And when I say plenty of sleep, the average adult needs 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night to function optimally. And you might be on the higher end of that and be like, no, I need 9.5. Great. But I'm going to tell you what, less than 7, you start to get as low of cognitive function as someone who is completely sleep deprived. So, someone who's completely sleep deprived, they also talk about being as unsafe to drive as someone who's intoxicated. And so, if you think about that, when you have 6 hours of sleep or less a night, your cognitive abilities go significantly down. And the difference is, though, and this is from Andrew Huberman, Dr. Andrew Huberman, he's a neuroscientist. What he talks about is when you've had only 6 hours of sleep, but not less, you think you're fine. But actually, your brain is not able to function at the level it is when you have that 8 hours of sleep, 9 hours of sleep. And that's true for everyone, not just ADHD. But with ADHD, it's particularly important because when we don't sleep, it is even harder for us to get ourselves to focus, feel motivated, and stay with it, right? Stay the course. And it's reminding me, I'm reading the book, The Soul Sourced Entrepreneur. And one of the things, I think that's the book where I read this. I'm reading a few books right now. That's kind of common for me. But one of the books I'm reading is talking about how information can be a distraction, how having all this information can be a distraction for our business. Oh, I need all this information. And she's more talking about information about how to do business, information about getting more certifications in what we offer. So that way we are good enough. And she talks about all that kind of information as a distraction, but also in my mind, too much information about the world could be a distraction unless your business is you're a news anchor or you are a journalist or podcaster who podcasts about what's going on in the world, right? So unless that's you, having more information is probably not helping you. And like we've already established, probably not helping the people that you're concerned about who are involved in the chaos and the war and whatever else is going on. So, sleep, back on the rails. It is very, very important with ADHD to get sleep, but also eat nutritionally. With ADHD, that's important, but especially when all of this stuff is going on, because even if you're not watching the news, the energy of the world right now, if you're an energy person, feels tense. It generally feels like everyone's like holding their breath, waiting to see what happens. I don't know if that's just with the election or what, but it feels like everyone's like, we're also potentially on the brink of World War III. So there's that, not to stress anyone out. There's all kinds of things that people could be holding their breath about. And so energetically, that's exhausting if you're an energy person. And so making sure that you're getting enough nutrients, eating regular meals, and eating nutritious foods. I'm not going to tell you not to eat your sweet treat because I have a sweet treat every night. It's how I roll. But it is important to make sure that you are getting nutrient dense food as well to fuel your brain in general with ADHD, but particularly when the energy of the world is so heavy right now and so hard just to even be tuned into. So, taking care of your physical and emotional wellness is important. One of the things about this is movement. And I want to step back just a little bit and share a little bit about the nervous system and what polar bears have to do with it. So, when you go into your fight or flight response, when you're tripped into your fight or flight response, which is way more nowadays than it was ever meant to be, but it's just that our brain doesn't know the difference between a negative social media comment or an eye roll or a tiger chasing us. Our brains don't know the difference, so they freak out every time they go, "Ah, danger, danger." And so that's you can train that over time to have some more space, especially with, like, mindfulness practices, but a lot of times we immediately go into our fight or flight response. And when that happens, we have not even a full second, I think it's milliseconds before we can say, "Is this danger?" And if our brain is like, "Yep, it's danger," then we are flooded with adrenaline, cortisol, and noradrenaline, which is also known as norepinephrine. And those hormones in the body, those chemicals are there to help you fight or flee. But what happens if you don't fight or flee? Because if it's a negative social media comment, it's not like you need to run away from the tiger, physically run. You might emotionally run, but you're not using your physical body to get away from that invisible tiger. And so that energy doesn't get used up in fighting or fleeing. And then most people do a lot of sitting, and that also does not help those hormones, those chemicals get used up. And so instead, they get stuck in the body and they build up over time. And in the short term, they can create like irritability, anxiety, or maybe even complete shutdown and numbness. Like you can kind of stay in those responses, starting to get in disagreements, things like that. But long term, you can end up in a state of burnout or have even chronic illnesses. There's a huge connection between autoimmune disease and this kind of stress. That's why so many complex trauma survivors have autoimmune disease is because their nervous systems are just constantly vacillating between fight or flight and shutdown response. To be clear, I'm not saying there's necessarily causation there. Not every single person who has complex trauma ends up with an autoimmune disease. So just to be clear, but it's not uncommon, and that nervous system piece is a huge piece of it. So it's like, then what do we do? Well, every single day, we need to be what we call completing the stress response. We need to use those chemicals, those hormones that our body floods us with to fight or flee so that they don't build up and get stuck in the body, so that we don't get sick more often, and so that we don't end up with more chronic disease. And the best way to do that, there's actually 7 ways I teach in my programs, but the best way to do that is with movement. 30 minutes of movement a day, and it doesn't even have to be consecutive. You can go on 3 10-minute walks. You can take your dog twice a day for a 15-minute walk. You can go for a 5-minute walk between clients if you have 6 clients, right? However it is, getting movement is your best bet to be able to move those chemicals through your body so that they're not getting stuck and they're not wreaking havoc. And that's essential for helping your business because if you're a mess, right? No offense, but if you're a mess because you're dysregulated and you're burning out because all this stuff is building up in your body, it's going to be really, really hard to focus and do the things you need to do, let alone have nice energy to attract people to you, new clients to you. So, this is a really important piece. Other things that you can do to help regulate are and get grounded are things like daily mindfulness practices. That could be Tai Chi, it could be yoga, it could be Qigong, it could be mindfully brushing your teeth or mindfully washing the dishes. Getting out in nature, earthing that putting your bare feet on the floor or on the floor. I mean, the floor is better than nothing, but if you go out and put your feet on the grass or earth, like soil, earth, actually can be very, very grounding. I find hugging a tree can be grounding, being in nature can be grounding. And so finding ways to get grounded, which is really just regulating your nervous system, is going to help you be able to focus better and be able to feel motivated to get stuff done, even when there is chaotic stuff going on in the world. Now, this is not going to be popular with especially the younger generation because I have a lot of Gen Zers in my that I see in therapy, and If you're Gen Z, I love y'all. You are going to tear this world down and make it better. I know that to be true. I 100% know it to be true. And I want to support you in not falling apart before you have a chance to do that. And so it's about balance, right? It's about thinking and being intentional about how much exposure you have to the stressful things, how much you take in news. I'm going to tell you something. Before I completely was like, I cannot watch news right now, I was like, oh, I could just watch a little bit. I, I could just look up how the debate went, see how it went. No, my ADHD brain does not allow that. It's automatically a deep dive rabbit hole. Mostly because there's panic, and I'm trying to like I told you before, what I noticed is I was seeking certainty and good news, and that can be hard to come by because news outlets don't make money off of good news, which is why Fix the News, that's their mission, is to share things that are not awful all the time. Their saying is, "If it bleeds, it leads." And so that's why they try and share things that don't bleed, but they don't say it that way. I don't know about you, it's really hard when you start watching something like that to get off of it. So, I'm not saying you have to completely not watch any news or not know what's going on. Just maybe find a way to have some balance in your life and to do it more intentionally and to think about what is your intention? Is it just to know? And then if it's just to know, what's that about for you? What are you concerned would happen if you didn't know? And I can't answer that for you. But what are you concerned would happen if you didn't know? And if part of that answer is, oh my gosh, those people though, bad things happening to them, someone needs to witness it. For sure. It's important that we're holding them in our hearts. And if, like I said before, if we are so bogged down by the heaviness, then we can't do anything to help them. Nothing productive, at least. So, what I would encourage you to do is be intentional with your news exposure. And when I say news exposure, I also mean social media because at this point, everyone's posting everything. So, you can't be on any kind of social media platform right now without the drama of everything going on. Although Instagram, I'm not noticing as much on Instagram. So, Instagram seems like the one that's maybe, I don't know, less intense. Although, who knows? Maybe it's because of what I follow on Instagram. I mostly just follow entrepreneurs, and most of us stay away from where we land politically because it's not necessarily something people need to know about us to benefit from our services, right? Unless you're an entrepreneur who's a journalist. So, and even then, journalists share the facts. So, at least I think they're supposed to. Huh. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. And as a takeaway, my hope for you is that you reflect on the chaos of the world and how it's impacting you and how you're getting that information. And if that information is serving you the way it's coming to you, and understand what's it about. What are you concerned would happen if you stopped? And if it's just that you wouldn't have cool stuff to talk about, maybe there's other things to talk about that that might forge deeper connections than just the shit. Maybe there's other meaningful conversations we can have, or maybe conversations about the solution. So, sure, maybe there's some benefit to that. But if your benefit is to help others, then to be really intentional about is how I'm taking this in, supporting my vision to help others going through this pain. And how is all of that impacting my business? How is it impacting my ADHD, my ability to focus, my ability to sleep so I can focus and feel motivated, right? These are important questions, and I don't have the answers for you personally. I can only do what I know I need so that I can best serve my client and be here for you. And so much is happening. It warrants some time to figure it out so that we're not wrecking our businesses over being informed or letting ourselves get distracted under the excuse of being informed. So, all right. I'm grateful you're here, and my heart is with you wherever you are. My heart is with you if you're in a place of war or where a disaster has just struck, or really any kind of personal war. My heart is with you. And I hope that we can help you find a way through it. But I also hope that if you're not in one of those places, you can help find your way through so that you can be a beacon of support for others, especially the people you serve. May you have a wonderful rest of your day, week, month, whatever it is. And if you're not following already, please follow the Self Loved Woman Way podcast and be sure to share it if you think this would be helpful for someone. Take care.